What is going on, guys, and welcome to Split Screen D&D, the show where we're attacking all things Dungeons and Dragons from both sides of the screen. My name's Tom Quinn, resident Dungeon Master here at Modern Myth.
And I'm Josh Winans, resident player character here at Modern Myth.
And today we're going to be rounding out the three-part series, the pillars of gameplay within the world of Dungeons and Dragons. So we've already done social, we've already done exploration. It's only fitting that we round it out with what I think is a lot of people's favorite, combat.
Yeah.
I think combat's an exciting one, well, for a lot of reasons. But I think kind of just as I touched on, there's so many people who come to the table for the very first time.
Giggity.
Because who come to the table for the very first time because they want to hack up monsters. They want to collect that sweet loot.
Yeah, no, I think it's what makes D&D approachable to a lot of different people compared to some other systems.
Yeah.
You know,
and I think I think that's a double-edged sword. I think anything that's bringing people to the table to start having these experiences is a good thing. There's no question about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I do think that there is a little bit of, let's say, reframing that maybe occurs with players who are, let's say, coming to the table assuming that they're playing a tabletop version of Diablo. Now, always heavily couched in the fact that if that's the type of game you're running, more power to you.
Have fun.
But I think that there are so many people in the community. It is one of the three pillars for a reason. It's not the only pillar,
Right.
And I think a big part of this entire series is really to acknowledge the importance of all three. Now, you may diminish or elevate those pillars.
And it's a personal choice too. I don't know about how DMs feel. Like, as a DM, do you have to kind of like have them all equal, or do you take every player? You have to be like, oh, that one likes social, so I got to make sure I still playing social. Or do you have a favorite pillar yourself?
I'd be blown away if there's DMs out there who don't espouse a certain pillar. I think first and foremost, you should start at ground zero with all pillars being equal. And then I think from there, one, as you get to know your players, if you've been playing with them for a long time, you're halfway there already. But
doesn't hurt.
And as you start to play with new players, beginning to assess what it is they're getting out of the experiences, and begin to, again, like I said, elevate or diminish those pillars. I mean, absolutely. And I think maybe before we dive into D&D hard and fast,
but I like digging in.
I know,
thing,
but.
Man.
But just bear with me for 1 second. It's just that there are many tabletop role-playing systems that are void of one or even two of those pillars.
Yep.
I mean, there are entire purely social experiences that are fundamentally just looter shooter experiences. And so there are many different configurations.
Yeah.
But we are talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and Dungeons and Dragons, at least kind of by its core concept, is the three-pillared game. So I really think combat is what brings a lot of players to the table. But I do think that it's also for players who are really into combat. That's a really easy thing for them to grasp. It's not always easy to grasp the importance of the other pillars within that space and the way that those pillars can serve to heighten combat.
Right. Now, are you talking about having during combat a trap sequence, which kind of has an exploration feel to it?
Certainly being able to inject those directly into combat, but I would also say, taking something like you guys are fighting a villain in a small town. Well, is that a more compelling fight if you know that person has been stealing children from the local villagers, and and undoubtedly you garnered that information through social.
Yeah.
So that's an example of how the importance of that combat has been, those seeds have been sown by different pillars.
Increasing motivation.
Absolutely.
Which, hey, if you haven't checked out Tom on DM and the PM, isn't that one of your episodes? Is motivation?
Motivation is
there
one
you
of
go.
them on there.
Plug one.
Man, I didn't even have to do it. I didn't even have to do it. This guy's getting pretty good.
I'm
going to have you back. I'm going to have you. No. It's and I think there's a reason why that is there's an entire episode on DM and the PM focusing on motivation is because I think that it speaks to the combat pillar really well. Is there's a difference between a fight where the party is killing things and collecting loot. Let's say you're on your way somewhere and you're waylaid by a pack of were-rats.
Right. Whatever.
Maybe there's absolutely no context for this. You just happen to be traveling through a wooded area,
right?
And you're attacked. There's nothing to say that that's not going to be an interesting and fun encounter, but the weight and the meaning behind that encounter is generally not inherent to combat itself. It's been lent to combat by the other aspects of the game.
So the combat's being elevated by the other pillars.
Exactly.
Ideally.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say that the same could be said for all of them. And I think in the other episodes we detailed kind of how they hold hands.
Right. We kind of already done that.
Yeah. But let's I guess dig a little deeper specifically into combat, because I know combat is your pillar of choice.
Combat is my jam. That's why I play the fucking game. Don't get me wrong. I like social. Exploration. My character's not really good at it. I wonder, my next character, I'm going to actually make him more exploration focused. But combat, that's my heart, that's my soul. That's why I show up at the table.
So talk with me, first and foremost, talk with me why. Why does combat eclipse the other two pillars for you? What is it about rolling initiative that really just takes it to the next level for you?
It's an opportunity. So I really enjoy the character creation. It's an opportunity for me to employ all these things I've been working on and building in my brain and active. You use the word actuate them in a moment. And again, I think I say this a lot, and I'm beginning to wonder if I need to rethink it. That D&D, one of the reasons why a lot of people play D&D is to get to feel powerful. And I think really where you see that is when you're fighting a fucking dragon.
No, absolutely. And, well, actually, it's kind of interesting that you put it that way, because I haven't really correlated it to the DM experience, but in some regards, I think it's not so different from, okay, we're working through this session, and I know like there's this really cool plot hook. Like, this is the work I've been doing behind the scenes. You're building your character. You're laying out these cool powers. And I mean, I know how much as a DM I can be like, I know this session, they're gonna finally find it. They're gonna finally, And so I can completely relate to the notion of I've been putting in all of this time away from the table, making something that's going to impress the rest of the table, that people are gonna go like, holy crap, did you just see that? Like, so I hadn't really correlated it, but I can completely empathize with the notion of it's time for everyone to see what I've been working on
to a degree. And it's also a time for like oh my gosh, so much creativity. One of my favorite games growing up was XCOM UFO Defense. Fantastic, the original game, and the new ones are
the remake's pretty
too.
solid too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed them. I got frustrated and stopped playing. I'm getting less patient, I guess, as I get older.
Once Japan stops funding you, you might as well just right.
But dude, I used to save the game after every turn, and if I lost one,
wait, you scum saved your way through video games?
Same so hard.
I'm so glad that Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have a save point. I was just
quick save.
I was reading a deal about someone who gave their party an item that was
but if it's a legendary one-time use in the entire campaign.
Oh, I love it as one. No, it was. I mean, I think they were playing a real tongue-in-cheek kind of.
Gotcha.
But actually, I love the idea about a one-time use,
like an hourglass. You throw it on the ground and you reload from a certain spot. That would be fucking sick. Ooh,
there's a whole lot by way of just a really interesting story that could be told around that mechanic. But
yeah, I got so excited about that. I forgot my original point. But
no, just I mean, talking about what is the drive? You've created this awesome character.
But yeah, so yeah, thank you very much. It's a tactics, and that when I'm playing combat, so I'll take my turn. I'm usually last because I'm a fucking paladin with 0 dex and all that stuff. But the whole entire time, someone will make a move. I'll be like, okay, now what's my most optimal move? Okay, the next person goes, okay, how has that changed my original plan? What do I do now? And I just keep going. And so I'm constantly engaged the entire combat because I'm constantly thinking of what to do. So, which is also really nice when it's my turn. It's like, boom, 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 I'm done. And it's really nice.
And that's a big thing that I will say. I know a lot of times we'll kind of go like player, DM, and just kind of do these blocks. But I think for combat, there's going to be so many points where I really think the interesting thing about combat is whereas almost all the other pillars players and DMs are existing in this kind of pseudo harmony. You know, I mean, and even let's say that I'm an antagonistic NPC.
I disagree completely. I hate your guts.
Oh well, you know, it's.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm glad that's out.
I'm not having you back. No, but it's so this pseudo harmony that kind of exists in where like in the social pillar,
Okay.
more or less at the table, you're kind of in these weird flirtations with your players. I mean, whether it's an actual flirtation or just, but effectively in real time, you're trying to pretend like you've never met this person and you're just kind of
improv. It's complete improv.
Yeah, and so there's a certain needing to play off of one another. I think that the stark difference with combat, and this is going to be different for each player, different for each DM.
Yeah, I'm curious where you're going with this.
But so what you were talking about, you ended your point by just saying, by being hyper focused and being hyper invested in combat, you on your turn are bing, 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 you're ready to go.
Yeah.
One thing I can say to anybody, I don't think there's a DM in the world who wouldn't appreciate even faster actuation during combat.
Oh, you're talking about pacing.
Well, certainly. I mean, we're trying to maintain something that feels like a frenetic combat environment.
If you spend 5 minutes on a turn, it really takes. Yeah,
and,
that's very
and so
true.
a big part of that, and that really does land in the player domain. But that is just to say that whereas we're kind of talking about that the push and pull between the DM who is it, and again, this from my specific perspective, I am trying to move through both player and NPC or monster turns as fluidly as possible, such that we get some semblance, some idea of what that pace might feel like.
Yeah, that, and you brought such a, I've never really thought about before, is like we are trying to recreate famous battles from Lord of the Rings, and if and when you watch Lord of the Rings, there's not a lot of like, okay, what am I going to do with my turn? Do I need to do this? They just are fucking doing it.
Yeah.
And
they're just taking action.
Right.
There's not really even any thinking.
And there's no way you can do that. But any way you can speed up the process and make it, I like the word fluid, it's going to drastically, for both sides, you're going to get more enjoyment out of it. We're going to get more enjoyment out of it.
Right. And I think on the topic of just pacing in general, I think it is something that probably DMs are more cognizant of than players are. And no, you got to consider it's a manifestation of 3, 4, 5 people all going like, what the hell am I going to do? What am I going to, versus one DM who's trying to keep that rolling.
And I think that's a big argument. So, sorry, I'm very much interrupting, and I apologize.
No, you're good.
There are so many DM tables, D&D tables that are like 7 or 8 players. And I don't, it seems like so much. Like I want to advocate for smaller tables.
Well, I definitely think from a combat standpoint,
even social.
Well, yeah.
Like every pillar stands brighter when there's less people, because then other people can share the spotlight more.
Yeah, I think to an extent. I mean, there's definitely give and take because you get those different personality injections that people start learning to riff off of. But I do think like, and this goes really, I guess, game wide. I think 4 to 5, I think, is pretty like 5, as far as I'm concerned, is a pretty nice max number. And obviously from a DM perspective, there's a lot more to think about the more players.
Yes. Yeah. So. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
But. No, that's but I guess my point with regard to pacing is just that when we're talking about the combat pillar, one of the things we always kind of nudge in all of these episodes is what makes it awesome. Yeah. Pacing makes combat awesome. There's no question about it. I don't care how much you are on combat or you love combat. If you're on combat, you don't want to sit in a combat for 4 hours.
Okay.
If you love combat, you want your turn coming around so you can do your next awesome thing. You don't want to be sitting and waiting for and that's not to say pacing is not exclusively we tear through combat. Pacing is understanding that there's going to be ebbs and flows, but those should be instituted with purpose, not with abstraction and going like, oh shit, what was how much damage was it? You know, I mean, those types of things.
Yeah.
And it happens. I mean, there's
Oh my
a lot
God.
mechanically. There's a lot to keep track
Especially
of.
you arcane users. Holy crap.
Yeah, and there's definitely. I mean, no doubt. There is also let's say a different level of mechanical taxation from class to class.
Yes, which we could get into too. But
yeah.
I would argue, I don't agree with you. Surprise, surprise. That it's not pacing makes it awesome, but I will say I've never been like I never got out of combat and was like that pacing was sick. I've never once said that. But if pacing is bad, I will feel that. So I think it's a detractor, but I don't think it's like what drives me to combat.
Well, so the main reason I would label it as something that's awesome, you already love combat.
Yeah.
But I think for people who are let's say somewhere else on that gradient, a well-paced combat can all of a sudden be a very exhilarating aspect of the game because they may not be as invested in every person that's, every piece that's being moved around the board, they may be going like, okay, those moved. What am I still doing? Like, gotcha. I don't, they're not invested in the same way that you might be invested in that experience.
Well, see, that involves a different person's point of view, and I just don't do that.
They're not basically fucking here, so
yeah, they can go. No, but that's a very good point. And one point that we always try to bring up is you have to remember how you enjoy the game is not how everyone else enjoys the game. Make sure that you're not detracting from other people's enjoyment of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I really think that I think DMs in general are cognizant of pacing. I think anyone who has played Dungeons and Dragons for any period of time acknowledges that it feels like a very different game from the time you roll initiative to the time that combat ends than the rest of the game.
Oh yeah, it's a totally different thing.
And I guess my argument would be is that anything we can do as DMs and subsequently anything that players can do to contribute in that process to blur the lines between how different those two experiences are. I think that ends up being a good thing, and that is not to suggest that we dissolve or do away with any of the mechanical, but I think that there are just the considerations of maximizing your efficiency on your given turn as a DM, doing the exact same. I mean, you may be running a dozen creatures. Something simple like rolling or using average damage, rolling for groups. These are all ways that as DMs we sacrifice, what would be the truest experiences. Well, you just got attacked by 11 Krethik hive soldiers or whatever.
Where'd you come with that one?
I just love the Krethik.
I don't know the Krethik at all.
It was a little don't worry about it.
I'm not gonna run into them later.
I'd be surprised if I run a campaign without them showing up at some point. Anyway, the minis have shown up as representations of other things many times. So these are ways that we like. It would be, again, from a mechanical standpoint, a lot more interesting to roll every single one of those, because you'd end up with these more varied. Sometimes, holy crap, they all rolled within 1 point of their max damage. That's a monster. Like, that would instill a little weight and fear into these creatures.
Right.
Other times they whiff and it's that sigh of relief, like, I thought I was getting dropped there.
The roll of averages, yeah.
But that is just a different game. And again, I think ultimately a lot of what we're talking about in the pillar here, especially when we talk about pacing, is this push and pull between old school and new school.
That's what it's sounding like.
And again, I just think that certainly I think what we run at our table is more akin to new school.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things about old school that I think were the right way of doing things. But I think there are fewer and fewer players who appreciate the time it takes to do those things in combat. And as DMs, to some extent, we're having to kind of play a la carte to the entire table, and so I think a good substitute for hitting everything right on the head, like checking every possible resistance or vulnerability, all of these little nuances that old school D&D really leaned on
hard,
and just so So my way of thinking, anyways, is a good substitute to an all-engrossing, highly mechanical simulationist. Now, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, I grew up on older games that were a lot more kind of grindy, dice grindy,
right, dungeon crawls.
yeah. And so I certainly don't mind that, but I think that I think even you loving combat as much as you love it, you would have to look across the table at the rest of the party, going like, why do we need to roll 8 dice to resolve this?
Yeah, there would
you
be
know,
a point where I'm like, yeah, it.
And so I think we've struck a happy medium.
Well, here's let's is a quick tip, D&D split screen quick tip. If you could give out one quick tip, no, it's probably not. I'm just rolling with it. But if you
just the tip,
never just a tip, Tom.
Okay,
you're a gentleman. You know better.
I'll give out the whole thing. What do we got?
If you could be one thing that you've like has really helped you make combat fluid from the DM side of things, what would it be?
And this is not going to apply to every combat encounter, but I think it will apply to combat encounters that really suffer from getting bogged down. I think if you are an example would be, let's say that a war is taking place, that the party is fighting amidst a war,
like 100 units.
Yeah, I mean, you might have, massive groups of units fighting.
That's probably too much, but anyway,
but it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. The more that we start rolling, like, let's move out one concentric circle out to, okay, here's the party, and here's even the people they know well inside that war. It doesn't matter what they're doing. Those aren't the protagonists of the story. Just narrate the carnage that's playing out around them as they make the same decisions they make. So you can create this scale of combat without modifying really the functionality. Now, every now and then, maybe you want to introduce some big wartime element. This giant arcane cannon fires off, and you just roll a handful of dice for the damage that it does as it obliterates something. But as a whole, I don't need to roll for the unit of pikemen that are 100 yards away and go like, well, the pikemen over there do 18 damage to the, it doesn't matter. So I think you can absolutely scale combat outward.
Okay.
But the goal really is just let that function in terms of the way you're interacting with it as a DM as environment. In the same way that you would say, oh yeah, there's those stalactites are, one of them collapses off and shatters to the ground as the fireball explodes. Just narrate the fact that there is carnage existing all around them. And now if they go, well, we want to run over and engage those pikemen. Well, now the players have brought those into the fold, and be prepared to run those if they decide to do that. But
I'm trying to recall an instance where you've done this type of scenario in our game.
Well, I don't think we've done anything quite that large, but I think it really ultimately the idea is build whatever encounter you're envisioning the same way that you would build it. And if that encounter is supposed to be taking place amidst a broader conflict, great. But allow that broader conflict to be set dressing to what is otherwise just a
okay. Yeah. So for big battles, encounter. But how would you help increase the flow state in a small battle? Like a standard encounter, how would you go about it?
Well, for starters, and I would be blown away if this is I don't know where the original comes from, but what got me doing it, and I still flail at doing it, is getting people on deck for their initiative. I think I really think as a DM, when you're working through initiative structure and being able to go, it's so and so's turn, whoever's next on initiative, you're on deck. This goes for DMs and players alike. The "you're on deck" statement you should employ it as a DM. If you're feeling like you want to up your pacing. But two, as players, that should be an immediate cue. Like no matter what table you're at, like so and so, you're on deck. Should be within the next 45 seconds. Hopefully, I'm going to be asking you what you're doing, and that decision shouldn't be made in 45 seconds. It should be made right now. That like that's you've actually been cut off. And since we're actually talking on initiative here, I want to run something by you because I'm curious. I was just chatting with some couple of Twitter followers.
Oh, fun!
Shout out to everyone on Twitter. Also, hey, we're brand new. We're the new kids on the block in the social media sphere.
Do you remember New Kids on the Block?
Yeah, I mean I remember them. I couldn't tell you anything about them.
But God, I feel like anyway. Go ahead.
That's but as the new kids on the block, a huge thank you to everyone
Thank you so much.
We've been crushing 10 followers a day. Which has been awesome. You guys have been great. And that community I've been interacting with a ton on Twitter.
Really?
Really awesome people there. A lot of people.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much.
One such interaction, we were talking about initiative and kind of alternative initiative systems.
Okay.
And someone had posted on basically the proposition of all of these things are technically supposed to be playing out. A round plays out simultaneously, even though you have an initiative order. Basically, when the initiative comes to an end, that's when all of those events happen. And now we're into the next 6-second block.
Oh, okay.
That's the design. And I actually don't disagree with that. Now, because I know we just talked about it, you like analyzing those.
So it really throw my play style. But I'm an open-minded guy.
So, and I think
wink. No.
It is Tuesday. Most people are most players, and I think this is what actually spurred this conversation on was a bunch of people saying like how can you encourage your players to like players might be really good at going, this is player knowledge, this is character knowledge. And in theory, that's exactly what's happening in combat. Another player's turn is player knowledge because in theory, you are doing your turn at the exact same time. It has to mechanically, we have to resolve it in order. But what was thrown out, and I actually was pretty intrigued by the notion. I immediately thought of you because
I'm probably not gonna like it. But
I think you might actually.
All right, no.
Is to use a side initiative structure. So basically, everyone rolls initiative in combat.
Gotcha.
And those initiative slots are not spoken for. So let's say you, Katarina, Aster, you guys roll initiative.
Okay.
So all initiative has been rolled. Yep. I roll initiative for all of the enemies.
Gotcha.
Now combat starts. Let's say that Katarina rolls a 21.
Fair.
Cool. That is not Katarina's initiative. That is any of the rovers' initiative. You guys choose.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah. But on my turn, I choose any of the players that I want.
Fair is fair.
And the interesting thing is it means you can't calculate what's going to play out in any specific order. And moreover, I see again. I thought that
that's kind of cool. Actually,
yeah. I thought you would like it, and I thought that it's a great concept. I am not recalling the system that it's from. It's from a different RPG system. I will drop it down in the description because cool. It's I love the idea. I for one was not familiar with it. If you guys know the system offhand, beat me to the punch and hit it in the comments.
Hey, if you commented and subscribed yet, because you need to.
That's as clean cut as that gets. But it's an interesting thing because initiative structure actually plays a tremendous role in the tactics of combat. And since that's a big thing for you, small modifications to initiative structure.
Let me throw this out there. I think I would love this immensely, but I don't know if everyone at my table would like it.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things. There are so many awesome variations on rule sets that you just have to adopt in your own time or not.
Right.
But it's
interesting and it's something worth bringing up. But I could see it bogging down. Like, okay, who goes now? Who goes? And like a lot of deliberation happening.
Right.
So
I think it really does represent it's an initiative structure that is tailored more for the tactically minded players. And there's some things I really love about that. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, the more I think about it, the more I like it.
Yeah.
But again, coming back to how is that going to improve the game, I probably would get more enjoyment out of it.
Right.
But
And I think, yeah, in the median of, and again, as we are existing in a time where social really has become king, I don't think there's any, and again, this is more in the broader,
I can't believe I let him go. I was peaceful this last encounter, man. Oh, I had the chance to rip open and let power shine.
I know. You can't say too much. You can't say too much. That hasn't really. I'll float a teaser out there. Hopefully in the next week or so here. But
yeah.
But so let's arc back to the pillar itself, because we got a little in the weeds there. But I mean, this is all pertinent to combat, so I don't think there's any no harm, no foul. But
will you forgive us, viewers?
Forgive you in the comments.
A little heart symbol.
No one's gonna do that. No one's gonna
I bet you one person. Be that one person who puts the heart symbol in the comments.
I prove him wrong. But no. So I think that I really do think that the two sides of the screen, and quite frankly, I don't know for the type of table that we run that these are. I think these are they cannot be reconciled. I think that my job is to ensure that things are playing out as fluidly and smoothly as possible. And that to some degree is going to stand in contention with the mechanical step-by-step.
Right. And this is and combat is my opportunity to show you how badass my character is.
Right.
And that's where I get to show I'm the hero. That's where I get to show I'm worthy of all this stuff that's happening is in combat, ideally, unless you're a little, you know what, and then sorry, it sucks. Build a better character.
Well, so here would be my question to you.
Yeah.
You actuate a massive turn, a big turn.
Crits all around.
Whatever. But just something that when you end your turn, you're like, oh man, that felt good.
I do that every turn. Anyway, go ahead.
Not every turn.
No,
not every turn.
Not every turn.
But it is one of these deals where I guess, is that a more satisfying turn if it's been, let's just use the term, deconstructed down to its mechanical facets, or if it's something where you know what you want to do, you actuate it, I provide you the DM environmental feedback to what has happened, and we're on to the next turn. Like,
so fluidity is king over.
No, just there's nothing. I don't think there's anything about a turn running fluidly that takes away from the heroics of that turn. If anything, I think it actually enhances. And that's kind of my point, is that if you do something really heroic on your turn, but you spent 8 minutes deciding what that something was,
then no one cares.
People are going to be like, oh, thank God. Okay, now I'm going to, you know, and that's my point, is that if people don't feel like we are making forward progress within the combat sphere, I think that's where combat across the board begins to lose the value in the space.
And one thing, a tool that we never used because we just naturally got better at it was sand timers. Or you know, you have until the sand goes out and to make your turn. And so that can, if you're really struggling with that, I can see that as being a really useful tool.
It's a pretty high pressure tool too. I can absolutely see players not
maybe.
Well, but I love the pressure that I mean, if you're going for if you're trying to impart the fact that, like, that archer across the way, he's drawing that bow. Like, maybe time is dilating, but it hasn't stopped because your turn's there, you know?
And it could be like a 2-minute timer, though, but it allows a physical representation that the player can see. Because you've said, like, oh, you have 2 minutes, click, and you put it on your phone. The player doesn't know how much time has passed.
Yeah.
But,
And I think for the most part, I would be very surprised if mini tables, the tables that are getting into those weeds are probably getting there because they like being there. They don't mind, you know, a 5-minute turn, because they're working through these highly technical, very combat centric campaigns.
Well, I will argue to the opposite, because that's my fucking job. That I am that guy that likes quick, efficient combat. And there has been times at our table, so Amanda and Ariel, if you're listening right now, this is in the past. It's not now. I love you guys very much. But in the past, I was banging my head against the table, being like, "Oh my God, can we please hurry up?" Yeah, and I'm thinking very early on, and especially in 5e when we're learning a whole new system.
Well, and here's the thing: is I think you're nailing the point that I've been trying to drive home. Is everyone's experience of combat is diminished, even people who really love combat.
Yeah.
If you don't have a sense of this is actually combat, it's not like I'm going to just stand right here and then like 8 minutes from now I'm going to do something. You're like, this is playing out in 6-second cross sections of reality.
Well, let me give you my D&D quick tip, because I only give the tip because I'm not a gentleman. Is
I know it.
I think I've already hit it on it several times, but really, this is my way of playing, so in no way, shape, or form am I saying like this is the way you have to do it. But hey, maybe give this a shot. Is plan out your turn fluidly. Every person takes a turn, and your plan adjusts as each person takes a turn. The reason why I like this is when it's your turn, bam, bam, bam. You already know exactly what you're doing. Combat goes really quick. What is also really fun about it is I'm also very engaged with what everyone else is doing at the table. So I get to celebrate in their successes. Or I'm like, oh man, that was a sweet fucking move. Oh, you did that? How can I play off that to make it really worthwhile?
Right.
You know, it just makes you so much more invested. I understand that not everyone might get a kick out of that, but that would be my tip. And be prepared. Know your powers, know your abilities. Bless you, arcane full casters. Know your spells. I know you have like 14 of them, but like that really helps.
Yeah. Well, and there's no question that again, it's your job as a player is to know those things.
Yes.
That's your and no doubt, like we talked on before, the taxation of what it takes to know your character
depends on the character.
Yeah.
Like my poor wife is a wizard, and just even I am like, holy shit, you have so many options.
And I think the wizard is probably the most stark example, but any of the full casters really do have a lot on their plate. Let's pivot a little bit to ways that we can look to, let's say, enhance the combat pillar. We've kind of talked about the ways that the other pillars kind of hold hands and the ways that they enhance one another. But let's talk a little bit about, and there's a couple points that, one that isn't quite into the other pillars phase, but let's talk real quick about the notion of, in a given combat encounter, and the way I kind of think about it is kind of what you might consider a solitary action versus a cooperative action. Because I really think this is a place that, one, a lot of tables could benefit from thinking about this. And this is entirely in the player domain. There really isn't anything. I mean, a DM can just lay out that space and, be like, oh, well, there's a trampoline there and there's a chandelier there. And there, like you could make it whatever fun house you want it to be with all sorts of crazy stuff. But ultimately, the way I really think about these are, think about your typical turn structure.
Okay.
You take an action that is within your kit. You use your movement. You use your bonus. That is, and you've done damage. You've repositioned.
You've done everything. You've done a full turn.
Yeah, that is a solitary turn fundamentally.
Yes.
An alternative, and this is such a tropey example, but I think it's a great example. Is the barbarian opts to throw the halfling rogue up onto the back of the Hydra.
I always love that shit. Yes, that's fun.
It's it makes combat awesome, no doubt.
Yeah.
Because one, you're beginning to build the same types of interactions that are occurring in the other places within the game world, but now it's happening in combat. The follow-up to that is reward the hell out of that behavior.
That's the thing, and this is where it took me a long. This is took me a long time to learn. I'm still learning this rule that he's talking about. So I'm a rules lawyer, video game raised. So in my mind, that makes no fucking sense. Why would the barbarian, a damage dealer, throw a halfling who is squishy probably onto a whatever?
Right.
Makes no sense. But the thing I always have to remind myself is the person sitting across from the person I'm fighting against, so that's not really what's happening, is a human being who's also interested in having a good time and having fun, who the rule of cool can come into effect, where a lot of interesting things can happen, where the rules can be bent or broken. And it just elevates the game to such an amazing thing. So if you're an optimizer or a rules lawyer, release the rules a little bit, and you'll find that like you can make movies.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of that hinges upon, again, the DM acknowledging that they are let's say de-optimizing their turn to do something interesting and exciting.
Yep.
And so give them a reward. Like now all of a sudden,
I'll say maybe not give them a reward, but give them the opportunity.
Well, yeah. Well, all I mean is now that halfling's on the back of the Hydra.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if all that means now is that the halfling is able to attack the Hydra like it always was, that's not a reward.
Right.
A reward is as long as he's on that Hydra's back, he's got advantage on all of his attacks. Well, that's huge. He's making acrobatics checks to stay there.
Because if you're a halfling and not a rogue, then what the fuck are you doing? Sneak attack.
Yeah. We have no disagreement there. But it really is. So it's a deal where, I mean, look at how much more exciting. You've got a barbarian and a halfling rogue. They are hacking at a Hydra. It's fighting with them. That could continue for 8 rounds, and the Hydra dies or they die. As opposed to now the halfling's on its back. The next turn, the barbarian leaps in, trying to draw as much attention from the thing as possible, while the halfling is now making acrobatics checks to stay up there.
But doing massive damage.
Doing massive damage with advantage, sneak attack.
Yep.
I mean, so when those types of things are playing out, it's whereas the players have decided they're going to depart from their optimization to do this. As a DM, depart from the fucking rule set and reward the fuck out of the behavior.
Yeah, if you want to see that, you have to reward it.
Yes.
100%.
And I can say 100% that as a DM, if and I would consider myself to be, I would probably say hierarchically social combat exploration. I think I do exploration a disservice on many occasions.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
But I don't think that I like combat only slightly less. Like only if I was put to the choice do I, they're like my kids. Like which one do I have
Combat's
to
better.
But it's one of these deals where for those people out there who has DMs where you're moving through these combat spaces and you just want to get through them so you can get on to your next plot point, so you can get on to your next social, so you can DMs are human beings at the table too who want certain things out of the game. Start rewarding creative behavior and you'll get the juices flowing for your players. And all of a sudden, combat doesn't have to, like we were talking about blurring those lines between when players start thinking creatively about the environment, creatively about the working together as a team.
Yes.
And creatively about the creatures that they're engaging with. I mean, you might be engaging with, let's say you're in a kennel and a pack of dogs and someone goes like, well, we just passed through, like there was a big old like beef haunch or something back there.
Right.
Let's go drag that back into the room. Like they'll eat the haunch. We'll get right through here. Like maybe you fully intended that they were going to be fighting these dogs, but what a cool way of.
Why would you not fight though? That's what I don't understand.
Well, there will certainly be players at the table who will breathe a distraught sigh as you walk by and the dogs chew on the haunch. But it's just an example of there are maybe more ways than one to skin that monster that you're standing in front of. And that's not to say it's always diverting combat, but maybe handling that combat in a totally different, bringing a boulder down or destroying the room,
rocks
collapsing
fall,
it on
everyone
them.
dies.
It's well, unfortunately, everyone. There's rocks
TPK.
have never fallen in which only the bad
It's
guys
a pebble.
die.
No, it doesn't matter. You're fucking dead. And I want to add on to that because me and excuse me, my grammar. Amanda and I are very much polar opposites. I feel in combat. She is far more creative. I'm more go what's best optimized. Sometimes Amanda will give an idea to Kel, like Kat will give Kel like, hey, we should do this. As a optimizer, I'm like, no, that's not what I should do. But then there's a part of me is like, let's see what happens. Yeah, this is not the most optimized mood. Probably no one's gonna die. Even if sometimes I'm starting to, God, I don't know what's happening to me. I'll make decisions where it's like, that's probably life or death right there. But you know what? Let's see what happens. And it's actually been really rewarding in
That's
so many
called
ways.
being a hero, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Kel is a hero.
That's the positive spin on it. The other one is, let's just say, more pessimistic.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so as a player, if there's other people at the table who come up with creative ideas, embrace it. Even if in your mind it doesn't make sense, especially with like new players who will suggest the weirdest fucking shit.
Yeah.
Try it. I mean, just see what happens. I mean, it's
Yeah, and I think, I mean, with a grain of salt.
Thank
There
you.
are certainly
That's a good
times
point.
where
That's a good
where
point.
I'm
Yes.
sure people will suggest something to you, and you go like, "No, I'm doing."
Let's launch a nuke at
it's-
Wait, we don't have that technology, buddy. I'm sorry. This isn't Fallout. Sorry.
No, wrong game.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be fun to play like a. Is there any tabletop RPG like?
There are so many. There are so many. And again, future campaigns, I would love to step out of the
Fantasy.
traditional. I mean, I'd love to go anywhere. Honestly, I'd be easy on that. But
What's that? Oh, sorry. No, that's super distracting. Anyway,
but I guess so I think in terms of creative play, that's one area where certainly as players and as DMs encourage the hell out of it. Players take those reins.
Yep.
But how else can we we touched, I think, a little bit on in the social pillar about the importance that social can have outside of that.
Yeah, motivations.
But and we talked about the motivations a little bit in this episode. Let's also talk about in the heat of combat.
Oh,
there is.
I see what you're saying.
And this is one. I would say, out of respect for the rule set that I think, again, if I were to begin dissolving with any fervency, you would rapidly lose interest in the game, because if I just go like, oh yeah, well, turn structure doesn't work like that anymore, we're just gonna do whatever. I mean, you'd be like,
yeah, I'd walk.
Yeah, I know. I'd have a mutiny on my hands, or at least a one-man mutiny
all the way out the door.
But I think one place where I don't even know that it's a proper betrayal of action economy. I encourage players to talk during combat. That is not to say that you can have a full-on conversation.
Okay, thank you.
But I really think those whatever, you've just made a powerful blow against an enemy and dropped them. You have no enemies standing in front of you now. Being able to glance around the battlefield and go and shout to one of your companions, things are getting dire. Impart that weight through social, because everyone's going to go, well, he's bloodied, he's near death, he's badly injured. Cool. The mechanical weight is starting to build up, but reinforce that with the social. And so this is not a plug for social. It's more of this is the way in which combat can feel more awesome. Again, same deal. For instance, you do that awesome thing on your turn that you're talking about. You want to feel powerful.
Yeah.
If another player, I don't care if it's out of turn, if another player, or an NPC wants to give you an attaboy, like that feels good as a player.
Oh yeah. 100%.
So it's one of those deals where, and I think you see a lot of players going, "Hey, that was awesome on your turn." All I'm saying is do it in game. Because all of a sudden you're going, these are real people covered in blood and viscera, their enemies. These are horrifying scenarios that are playing out. I mean, some of them are more tongue-in-cheek than horrifying, but the whole gamut is there.
Yeah.
And so it's really a deal where find those opportunities amidst all of that hectic energy to enhance that weight. Or there's a great time too, if you're that guy who just cleaves something down and it's like, well, there's still the dragon and the other dragon and the other dragon, but I did just kill that kobold. Like, I can lighten the tension by being like, I think we got this, guys. Like, you just.
But that creates humor, which is also a fantastic thing.
And that's the thing. It's like you kind of know what you bring socially to the group, and there's great opportunities within the pillar of combat to inject those, and they might just be 3, 4, 5 word little blurb out there, but it really does add that flavor.
So yes, I'm gonna add a little bit to that. I wanted to go to what we used to do at the table that really bogged down the flow. is we talked at the table, but not in character. We talked tactics, and that really bogged down the game. Don't do whatever you want. I apologize, but
don't do that. Don't do that.
I don't see much value in that.
Yeah, I think that's quintessential metagaming. It really is.
I think it is, and we used to do it, and I think it happens a lot at tables, and it's really tempting as a player because then you're optimizing and you can do all that stuff. But don't do it. But I will, as a player, it's just when I'm trying to think of like movies of like and especially wartime movies, the most dramatic, the most engaging conversations usually are in the shit. Saving Private Ryan, where Tom Hanks is talking to Matt Damon, he's like shooting at the tank and all that stuff. Or when someone's stabbed through the heart, or Boromir and Aragorn, one of the greatest freaking things in Lord of the Rings, where they have that talk. I mean, that's battle.
Well, and I think a death scene really epitomizes exactly what we're talking about. Presumably that's happening during combat. And that's another consideration too. And we were really starting to blur those combat lines. Someone has died on the battlefield. Like not they're making death saving throws. They have died.
Fully died.
But the combat is still going on around you. There's some serious implications for players there in that obviously you need to do what you have to do. You got to survive.
Yeah.
Or you want to anyways. But so it's just is one of those highlights.
Leave the body behind
if you have to flee, there's a lot of interesting there's a lot of interesting social that can blossom out of that. But I think the long and short of it is just don't, and this goes for any pillar, don't assume that they are divorced from one another.
Oh no,
there is so much overlap between all the pillars, and when you take the opportunities to go, I'm clearly in the combat pillar, like we're getting the tar kicked out of us.
Right.
Don't forget that you have great opportunities to inject the social.
Right.
When you're in I mean, just there's so much great overlap between the pillars.
Yes.
And it's really why I think the 3-pillar system is as strong as it is, and why it results in such powerful experiences.
It's a Venn diagram. That's what it is. Why is it a pillar? Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
or whatever. Yeah.
But
it's so true, and
with the center where they all cross, that's Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh,
yeah. Everything else is just
bullshit and shouldn't be at a table. But and I don't want to, like, sometimes we talk and I'm like, man, we sound like I don't do this very well, because like a lot of times during combat, I'm fucking combat centered, and during exploration I check out.
Here's another thing that I'll say, and this goes for when I'm chatting with people on social media, when we're doing these talks, when I'm doing DM in the PM, all it is a reinforcement. I mean, there are things I think about.
Always be better,
but there's always room for improvement. There's always ideas that people are going to float out there that you can just latch onto. There's always, that initiative system, I loved that idea.
It's a great idea.
I'm not saying that I'm pushing to implement
but
it.
No, I totally agree. That's a great idea. Whoever you are, I love you.
I will give him a shout out.
Is it Big Dick 69 420? Because that's the greatest.
Everyone I follow has some combination of those words in it, so I don't know.
It's D&D.
But no, I think that really taking aspects of any pillar and being able to inject them into the others. Specifically talking about combat here, there's great opportunities to do that.
Absolutely. Don't just, because I have a tendency to hyper focus, but I totally agree that they all blend together, and the more you blend them together. But when you do start to blend them together, it raises everything up. It's not replacing anything; it's rising.
It's definitely rising tide floats all pillars kind of a situation. And I honestly think that I think that there are some places that definitionally we have to kind of disagree on here, because you as a player can get fully invested in the mechanicals. Like you could go down that rabbit hole, and as a DM, unless every other player is down that rabbit hole, I have to some extent try to mitigate that during a combat. And this is I guess me starting to summarize my position. So I do think that there's an inherent median or kind of averaging of people's experiences of combat, such that you're still able to get what you want out of it by being able to think very tactically and
Yeah.
and move through
Yeah.
the turn structure the way that you
There's
like to.
room at the table for everyone to
Yeah.
enjoy the game.
But I do think that in order to
Probably.
in order to manage certain pacing elements as well as just, I mean, every combat can't be a 4-hour session. Sometimes I don't think we quite have the time. I want to touch on one thing real quick.
Super quick, because
Super quick.
we're getting there.
Is just the consideration when we're talking about pacing between running combat, full-fledged battle maps, miniatures, however you do it,
Right.
versus theater of the mind.
Right.
Certainly, I think there's implications on both sides.
Mhm.
Something I would just throw out to anyone who knows. Let's say you're running a session and you've got a lot to get done,
Yep.
but you want to have some of the spice of those combat
Mhm.
pillar littered in there. Run some just quick little 2-3 rounds of combat.
You have
theater
literally
of the
done
mind.
this to me quite a few times to keep me engaged.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you have to. I mean, even if I didn't have a player who was so tethered to the combat pillar, I just think there are times where you're in a space where you can't invest a 2-hour big battle.
Right. So you got like 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
What can we do?
And the thing is you can actually achieve very frenetic, very impactful weighted combat
Absolutely.
in 3 rounds.
Yep.
I mean, really quick combat that's playing
Or
out.
Twofer, what was his name? The little mouse.
It was Topher,
Twofer.
the hero rat of the Shattered Canyon.
Yeah, butchered that motherfucker.
I actually I don't know why I was surprised that you didn't remember his name, but
yeah. Do you know me at all?
No, I mean it was the fact that you were even
Twofer.
like 2 syllables.
Yeah.
It started with a T.
I nailed it. I nailed it. Thank you.
You nailed it.
But I totally agree. Sprinkle in some theater of the mind every once in a while. First, that quick little thing. Absolutely. All right.
Hit me with the player side, since I think the DM position, the long and short of it is manage your pacing.
Okay.
I really think it, and that can mean different things depending on what your players want out of that.
Yeah.
But you're still fundamentally you want combat to feel like it's playing out over the course of a few minutes, not a few hours.
Right.
If a war is transpiring, maybe that's a different story. But in a given skirmish, imagine fighting rats for 3 hours straight. Like it just wouldn't,
Man, that basement's never getting cleared.
Yeah.
But from the player side, being prepared to go off that, helping with the DM to make sure everything, being prepared, meaning knowing what your powers do and how they interact in combat. And man, if you want to get deep involved, to go run the little scenarios in your mind where you're going to be successful, I think that's really nice. If you really get into it, know what your team does as well. That could also really help. Pay attention at every turn. That like I was saying, like you are continually updated, which keeps you super engaged, is also really nice. But what I really want to hit on, and that I'm taking home from this conversation, is the other pillars can be added to the combat pillar to elevate the game completely. I get most out of combat. Amanda, I think, is mostly social. Right. So why not we feed each other a little bit? Like why not feed into that for her so she gets more enjoyment, which also makes it more meaningful for me as well.
Right.
Like think of other people at the table for sure.
I think
and creative play.
That got to have the creative play. That goes for every single pillar. What I really like about what you just touched on, and this will be my absolute final point,
bullshit,
is just the notion, and this goes for many of the pillars, but absolutely for combat. You were talking about staying focused, you get what you get out of these experiences, what you put in. So if you are maintaining your investment in that combat space, when your turn comes around, you are going to be more prepared to actuate. The pacing is going to feel better. Just bing, bing, bing. It's a domino effect. And I think no question that pillar is going to elevate inside everyone's games. I think that pretty much does it for us here, and I believe it's you need to be taking us out today, sir.
All right, well, give me a scenario.
I don't think it's going to be a scenario this time.
All right, what do you got?
I'm releasing the reins and I just want you give me a pretty darn sexy "The world is yours," but I just want the best. Whatever you think the best, "The world is yours" is.
Well, I'm gonna add it. All right. Those of you who have been joining us, we're just starting out. We're a young channel, and you've been awesome, engaging with us. We look forward to many more of these episodes. Thank you guys so much. To you, the world is yours.